comparable basis, the size of our state employee workforce is 20% larger than the state of New York's workforce on a per capita basis. You see, the only thing growing in Connecticut for far too long has been government. And government and casinos are not the key to our long-term growth. On the pension side, report just came out today. We are number one. We are now officially the most unfunded pension liability system in the country behind Illinois. $35,000 debt for each one of us sitting in this room per person. So we have to reform these things. You know, you're going to have candidates that are going to come up here and talk about restructuring and everything else. I've turned around businesses. I know what we need to do on those fronts. But here's the stuff people won't talk about. How do we grow again? How do we grow again? Industry-led urban ecosystems. Roosevelt Island. Mayor Bloomberg's doing it right down the road. It starts with how do we attract industry R&D organizations like the ones I've worked with, applied research universities, community colleges, trade schools who educate kids to do tasks that businesses need done. That attracts businesses to work with those institutions. That attracts millennials to be educated there to work in those places. That attracts the restaurants and the artists and everything else. In 6 years, Mayor Bloomberg got Cornell and Technion to move to Roosevelt Island, a patch of dirt. He put $100 million in, they brought $1 billion. In 6 years, 2.2 million square feet of newly developed real estate. Where's our Roosevelt Island? I think we have 3 of them. Around 3 of our greatest industries where we still compete effectively. Healthcare and life sciences, maybe that's around New Haven. Finance and insurance, one of the 2 of the largest segments of our economy still, around maybe Stanford or Hartford. And advanced manufacturing, still the largest helicopter maker, submarine maker, jet engine maker in the world. Why aren't we thinking laterally like this? I'll take one Roosevelt Island, but I will dream for 3. Because the mission you all have been on around transportation, as Don opened my eyes to, that's one part of it. The other part is mobility, safety, economic development. That's what we need to leverage all of our assets together across the state. It is possible to do this. But you have to have lived in these ecosystems before, like I have in the Silicon Valley or Minnesota, to do what we need to do and to work with you all to make it a reality. So, in the end of the day, you all have a path to pick. For 30 years, we've been going down this road since I graduated from high school. As I said, I believe it's been a road to ruin. And as Robert Frost says, we're finally at that fork in the road, ladies and gentlemen. And what did Yogi Berra say when you get to the fork of the road? You take it. I am trying to create with you the path of the builder, the innovator, the job creator. That has been our history of the state. We created the hamburger, the frisbee, and the nuclear submarine, for goodness sakes. We need to address our fiscal mess head on. But at the end of the day, we have to inspire ourselves and one another to create and build again. If not, no one's going to be left. So I will end with that. You all have to pick a path. Path of the politician or the path of the builder. And I look forward to earning your support over the next year. And as Abraham Lincoln said, if you want to predict the future, it's much easier to create it. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Michael Handler. Michael lives in New Canaan, Connecticut. He left private service and has served in several capacities in public service. Back in 2007 and in 2012, he was appointed Director of Administration for the City of Stamford. He's still served there today. Very good. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Don, and thank you everybody for arranging today's forum. And thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mike Handler, and Don's right. I serve in 2 capacities in 2 different communities. I serve as the Emergency Management Director for the town of New Canaan, and I serve as the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Stamford. A position I've held for over 5.5 years. When I got to Stamford, I found a city that was in financial crisis. On the surface, It looked strong, it looked vibrant. There were cranes in the air, development was continuing, but just below the surface loomed some pretty leery financial crisis. We were operating in businesses that the city had no business ever operating in. We owned and operated a skilled nursing facility. Only 3 other communities in the entire Northeast operate nursing facilities as a municipality, costing taxpayers over $5.5 million in the city of Stamford. We had unsustainable benefits in our employee contracts, benefits that were never largely funded. We had a balance sheet that had been exploited for short-term gain at the expense of long-term financial success. We had incredibly low cash reserves, and we had a long list of deferred maintenance with no funding source in sight. We all want to do good things. We all want to grow our economy. It's all about creating jobs. But one thing I will tell you, that if we are not able to get our fiscal house in order, nothing else can be done. We can't do those great things that we all want to do. So in Stamford, we exited the underperforming businesses. We privatized the Smith House. We maintained it as a long-term skilled nursing facility indefinitely. We have a private operator who's now offering full employment to our 170 valued employees. They are offering a home to all of our residents, regardless of their payer class, and taxpayers in Stamford save over $5.5 million a year. I say this because everybody can talk about privatizing or moving businesses outside of the realm of government into more efficient and affordable means, but very few have actually done it. In the city of Stamford, we've got a shining beacon of success in what used to be the Smith House, which is now the Villa, where we provide a great long-term solution to a long-term problem and save taxpayers, again, over $5.5 million a year. We've also tackled our employee benefits in our contracts. With 10 bargaining units, we've actually negotiated, not by being the loudest person in the room, but by being reasonable and explaining what the true definition of the term unsustainable means to employees and their families. This allowed us to bring employee benefits more in line with the private sector, but then we also put our money where our mouth is. We went ahead and fully funded all of our short-term and long-term obligations. Today, Stamford is the only major city that funds 100% of its short-term and long-term components for all employee benefits. We built up our reserves to over 10% of our budget. So we've got over $50 million of cash in the balance sheet. And we've also started looking at those deferred maintenance items. And for the first time in the city's history, we no longer use debt as the sole means to fund our capital projects. This year, the city is contributing 25% of our capital budget in the form of cash. We used to bond things like bridges and roads, perfectly acceptable. But we also used to bond cars and computers, not acceptable. Today, we use cash for most of those short-term capital projects. And as I said earlier, you can't do good things unless you get your fiscal house in order. So let's talk about things that we have done to change the city of Stamford and to grow our city. Having improved our fiscal condition to where we're truly a AAA city today, we've actually put meaningful investment into our schools. We invested $25 million, not into the things that you think politicians normally want to fund. We didn't put money into a new turf football field or a scoreboard, where it's expedient and politicians love to cut ribbons in front of these high-tech items. We actually put $25 million into our 20 schools for code compliance. Things that aren't very sexy, but things that keep our teachers and our students safe every single day. We invest in our parks, lighting, comfort stations. We're building our 21st school in the city of Stamford. Those of you in the industry, bids are due back in early January. We hope to compete. But it's a K-8 inter-district magnet school, and we're very proud of being able to grow our city and actually take students that are in overcrowded conditions in existing schools and move them to a new state-of-the-art school. We're also simultaneously building a brand new state-of-the-art police headquarters. And we're actually able to put our state-of-the-art police department into a state-of-the-art building, a building that's long overdue and should have been replaced 20 years ago. We're working on energy improvement in our schools and our government center. Don, you mentioned types of businesses that when they work well, nobody really notices, and when they don't work well, everybody seems to put you on the front page of the paper. I am the chairman of the wastewater treatment plant in the city of Stamford. I imagine it's much like owning an airline. When you run the wastewater treatment system correctly, nobody notices. One small little mistake, and you are on the cover of every paper, and everyone's talking about you. But we are a huge energy user. and we are finally getting around to investing our capital in reducing our energy and actually reducing our carbon footprint. We are also investing heavily in our infrastructure, roads and drainage. And we're also, for the first time, have hired traffic engineers to help us work on our traffic signalization, to help work and move our traffic through Stanford faster and safer. The best I can tell you, the current administration's transportation strategy is not working. Apparently, driving 20,000 people a year out of our state has not done much to reduce our traffic in the state. We must change the culture. We must be proactive and not reactive. We need strategic planning. We need to start thinking about how autonomous vehicles are going to affect our spending on things like parking structures. We need to be realistic on cost projections and get in front of the shortfalls now while they're manageable. We have to prioritize projects based on the highest possible good, not where the most political favors can be paid. We must determine what is most critical over the next 10 years. We must develop a core list of items that we can determine how we can pay for them. The right solution is to create a system that is consistent, one that can be accurately cost projected, scheduled, bid, paid for, and built. And lastly, we need to anticipate that we're going to have peaks and flows to our cycles. We need consistent growth. As a state, we need good roads, bridges, and trains. But as contractors, you need to know that there is work with a steady stream that you can plan for and build. Today, we operate, while the money's flowing, things are great, and you're building up your businesses, and as soon as we hit one little problem with financing, all projects seem to stop. Thankfully, the shortfalls we face, and we're talking about today, they're in the millions, not in the billions. I'm thankful that the cumulative effects grow into real problems in 2020, but that Wall Street's checks and balances have actually made us address this issue today. Our transportation needs are vital to the health of our state. It is absolutely critical to our ability to attract companies and talent. Those of you who rely on the stability of our infrastructure and transportation for your livelihood deserve someone in the Capitol that can provide leadership. I have done that in Stanford, and I will do it as your next governor. Thank you.
Timothy Herbst lives in Trumbull, Connecticut, where he chaired the planning and zoning committee for 4 of the 10 years that he served on it, and he was served as first selectman of Trumbull from 2009 to 2017. Mayor Herbst, thank you for joining us. You're up next.
Good morning, Don. Thank you for having me this morning. It's great to be here with all of you. And you know, as I was listening to the previous speakers, I spanned the room and I saw so many familiar faces because I've had the occasion to work with many of you on construction-related projects in my town of Trumbull. And I can honestly say without hesitation as I look out across this audience that we have among the best and the brightest contractors and those in the construction industry here in Connecticut, and we need to do more to support our construction industry. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to come before you this morning to share our vision for where we're going to take the state of Connecticut, especially as it relates to transportation. 8 years ago, I had the honor and privilege of being elected Trumbull's chief executive. And I came to office at a time when the town was facing tremendous challenge. We inherited a pension fund that was only funded at 27%. Taxes had increased 54% in the 8 years preceding my term. Town borrowing had more than doubled during that time. Our grant list showed stagnant and the year before negative growth. The year before I came into office, our credit rating was downgraded. So I knew that the challenges that we were going to face were enormous, in addition to inheriting 2 of the largest capital projects in the town's history. But I took the approach with a great team of people that we needed to be focused not on the next election, but the next generation. We needed to be focused on solving problems and coming up with solutions if we were going to, as I like to say, move the chains down the field. I'm the son of a football coach. And I believe in the X's and the O's, and I believe firmly that if you're going to move the chains down the field and achieve progress, it takes a team effort, a shared commitment, and a shared vision. So as I left office 2 weeks ago as first selectman of the town of Trumbull, I was proud of the fact that we balanced state budgets and were able to reduce taxes twice. We invested $48.8 million additional dollars into our pension fund without pension obligation bonds and realized a credit rating upgrade. Fitch, Moody's, S&P lauded our financial management practices, and I'm proud of the fact that our commercial economy, our commercial grand list, grew 64.5% in the last 8 years, in spite of the Great Recession and in spite of the fact that our state economy lags behind the rest of the country. I'm proud of our nationally ranked school system, and I'm proud that many of you have worked on our schools to modernize, or to help us to modernize 9 schools, making them energy efficient, clean, reliable, and 21st century ready. So as I travel the state of Connecticut, here's one thing that I hear everywhere I go in every corner of the state. If ever there was a time that the state of Connecticut needed proven reformers and Hartford outsiders to go up to the Capitol to shake things up, the time is now. And you've heard a lot of the speakers before me talk about our unfunded pension liabilities. We do have now the worst funded pension system in the country, as Steve mentioned. We also have an enormous post-employee benefit liability of anywhere from $19 to $21 billion, depending upon what assumptions you use. But on top of that, we have a state transportation fund that is on the brink of insolvency, and that's a big problem for the state of Connecticut. I talk about infrastructure reform when I campaign across the state of Connecticut, because it is just as critical as pension reform and benefit reform and tax reform, because for too long we have not been investing in our infrastructure here in the state of Connecticut. And as builders and contractors know, and as those of us that own homes know, that if you don't reinvest in your homes when you need to, and you don't make the needed capital investments when you need to, and when you kick the can too much, it gets to a tipping point when then you begin to realize, how are we going to be able to afford all that we are required to do, all that we must do? Not nice to haves. I'm talking about need to haves. So here's what I'm committed to doing if I'm elected the 89th governor of the state of Connecticut. We're going to get serious about developing a capital improvement program for our state that is realistic, sensible, ongoing, and affordable. Right now, we are at a breaking point. Recently, Commissioner Rediker and Secretary Barnes have exchanged correspondence over the State Transportation Fund, as has been reported in the media. The State Transportation Fund does not have the funds necessary to keep going our capital improvement programs as they relate to our highways, roads, bridges, and infrastructure program in total. We need to get serious about coming up with a plan that is realistic and sensible and affordable, as I mentioned. We have to stop playing gimmicks in the budget with the Special Transportation Fund. We need a governor that's committed to saying we need to create a Special Transportation Fund that has a lockbox or an enforceable provision to make sure that it cannot be rated to artificially balance the budget. There is not enough money in the STF right now to meet the current demands of what needs to be done in the state of Connecticut. And as we've learned, coming up on 2019, the state of Connecticut is talking about pulling back on anywhere from 40 to 50% of upcoming capital projects, increasing rates and fares on our rail system, bus system, cutting services. That's not going to help us grow our economy. Because when businesses see a state that is financially unstable, when businesses see a state that has been in structural deficit for each of the last 7 years, when businesses see that we don't have enough money to fund the projects that are necessary to have that reinvestment in our state, what happens is that businesses aren't going to want to come here. And I can tell you that businesses are not going to want to come here if their employees are going to have to spend 3 or 4 hours going to and from work. It's not only a quality of life issue, it's an economic development issue in our state. We are losing businesses to states like Massachusetts and New York. And I would submit to you that when we lose businesses to a state that was once referred to as Taxachusetts, we here in Connecticut have a very serious problem that we need to address. And it's about meeting our financial obligations, reforming our pension systems, balancing our budget without one-time revenue or gimmicks, reducing the tax burden and the cost of living, reducing our utility costs, And by doing that, encouraging job creators to reinvest in our state. And that also starts with reforming the regulatory environment in our state. I've spoken to many of you. I'm looking out in this audience, and I know I've had these conversations with many of you. I have heard horror stories from those that have had to deal with the DOT, the DEP, and other agencies in this state, and the regulatory environment in this state. When we make it harder and harder for businesses to grow and to build and to construct and to invest, they're going to look elsewhere. And the proof is what I just mentioned. Losing businesses to other states, and when we travel to other states, like Texas, like Tennessee, you get off the plane and you go into their capital cities and you see the cranes and you see the construction and you see the activity. It's not only because they have stable finances and a stable tax system, they have a less burdensome regulatory environment, and they're investing in their infrastructure. They make it a priority. So in the state of Connecticut, we need to make infrastructure reform a priority. We need to make sure that we are not raiding those funds to artificially balance our budget. We need to make sure that we have a long-term plan that the legislature gets behind, and we have to have a governor that has the political will to say the following. You're going to hear from a lot of candidates in this race. We need leaders that are focused on the next generation, and we need to stop sending politicians to Hartford that are always focused on the next election. And here's one thing that I say as I travel the state of Connecticut. I am prepared to be a one-term governor who does not get reelected if it means doing the right thing, making the tough decisions, and doing what needs to be done to get our state back on track. Our state deserves honesty, it deserves candor, our citizens expect nothing less, and it's time for all of us to get back to work, rebuilding our state to ensure that the reality of Connecticut lives up to the promise of Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Eric Mastroianni lives in New Haven. He's a U.S. Navy veteran. And he's a dispatcher and dual utility pro with Colonial Hardware Supply. Eric, very nice to have you here today.
Thank you. You're welcome. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity to be in front of you today. To all the companies, contractors, suppliers. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous at this moment, but I'm going to give a quick who I am. I was a United States Navy equipment operator with the Seabees. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. My name is on the War Memorial in Camden, and I served with pride. And as your next governor, if elected, I will serve the state of Connecticut with the same know-how, can-do attitude of the Seabees. Transportation is a very big issue. I am every day in it. I am a dispatcher of 30 branches throughout the United States for Colony Hardware Supply. Many of you know us, have seen us, and dealt with us. I also have a little insight to share with you that I'm going to be honest, which I am. I Uber on the side. I Uber to meet people for becoming governor, if elected. And the things that I've heard, I want to share with you at this moment. A lot of people said, if we can expand our airport at Tweed, far as getting flights from DC to New Haven, it will boost our economy, and it would boost business, and also on the side of tourism for more revenue. They made a statement of almost everyone that I Ubered lately. I've been all over the state. And they said that we don't have an adequate transportation system. In many parts of Connecticut, they feel that we lack very much in it. They would like to be able to get somewhere and see more of the beautiful state that we have here. But unfortunately, sometimes they can't. I'm sorry if I jump around. I believe that our deficit, our state budget is $2 billion, correct me if I'm wrong, a 12% of the annual tax revenue. The most of our tax base, which is age 35 to 44-year-olds, has declined 20% since 1994. Typical resident pays a hefty typical resident pays a hefty state tax, which is 10th highest in the United States, and 3rd highest of local property taxes. We have one of the richest communities down in the southwest Connecticut in the world. But yet, our largest cities like Bridgeport, Waterbury, and a few others are very punished and in need of businesses being drawn back to them. A few things I see as a dispatcher. I helped implemented a system at Groton Subways to put dispatching on computer, which saved cost, reduced repairs, and was very instrumental to the Navy Seabees, keeping track of their cease or equipment for security and retrieval purpose. By putting GPSs in the vehicles, I know we're going to put GPSs, it's going to cost to do it, but it'll reduce fuel costs between 10 to 17%. It'll keep real-time an eye where we can locate our assets. It will decrease overtime and more productivity to be at the job, to do your job for the customers, which are, without the customer, we're nothing. It'll lower insurance costs, which is 8 to 11%. It'll increase driver productivity for those who have the businesses that you're on call for customers. In solving these 7 items, we will make our operations more profitable and to be able to have more money to operate as businesses. Now, business. We don't need any more casinos here, I'm sorry to say, like in Bridgeport. And forgive me for being so blunt. We need more textile, bring that back, manufacturing, more local businesses to be able to create their business and be part of the business community, because small businesses are the backbone of our society. I say that because my dad was a small business owner. He did house remodeling and roofing before he passed away of cancer in 2012. I used to go on jobs with him and I learned a lot. I deal with a lot of you companies that are here today, personally in job sites, and when you guys have a problem, I'm Mr. Fix It for the company to find out why. Because I understand that you, the customer, are very vital to our business, and we appreciate that, because without you guys, we won't exist. Now, as governor, I can't make you promises, but I will try my hardest to do what's right and to bring accountability and respectability back to that office. I echo what Mr. Steve said. We need to do better, and better is putting someone in that office that's going to give it a try and do as they say. I believe also salaries are way too high for the governor's office. And I say for 2 years now, and I'll say it here. If elected governor, a portion of my salary will go to scholarships. I am in favor for trades and trade schools. I was equipment operator, that's where I learned from. And I became one of the best there was, to be honest, because I was a chef. Before that, I went to an equipment operator competition, and I took 50% of the competitions on graders, scrapers, and dozers. And I didn't even get on a piece of equipment before that, which was amazing. I even amazed myself. So, I believe bringing back the trades and trade schools, instead of drawing talent, why don't we focus on keeping the talent that's already here among us and build them up and give them opportunities that they well deserve instead of attracting talent? Because those youth, those seniors and juniors in high school today are the leaders of tomorrow, and we must help guide them in what they need and to do as students. Give them opportunity to go in that field, see what it's like. Do a partnership with the Operator Engineers Union and all the other fields to let them get a glimpse of what it's like to be a welder, an equipment operator, or steel iron worker. And also, yes, we lost a lot of business to Mass in New York, but by doing the right thing, we could build Connecticut up. And the last thing I'm going to say is to fix it, we need to build up these communities to where the middle class wants to stay and to where they want to come and call Connecticut home. Again, I'm Eric Mastriani, and thank you for your time.
Scott Merrill is our next speaker. Scott lives in Rowayton, Connecticut. He's a doctor of veterinary medicine. Scott, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
I'd like to thank everybody for having me here. And I'll admit to you all, I'm not your normal candidate. The regular folks in this country have to wake up right away and take control back of the United States of America. The socialist agenda doesn't work. Created World War I, created World War II. Trying to create, over my lifetime, this massive state government. What benefit does any person in this room get, or any member of your family get from the creation of state income tax? What have you ever received as a benefit? I was born and raised in this state. What benefit does anyone get from state income tax? Anyway, power to tax is the power to destroy. Who said that? The great Supreme Court Justice, John Marshall. The state of Connecticut has destroyed itself by taxing people with the extortion scheme they call property tax evaluation to a bizarre, wacky degree. You force people to sell their homes at Rowayton. You force them. And you use basically a mafia gangster tactics on the citizens. It's been going on since 1998, who live in the waterfront communities of this state, and that's the backbone of this state. My grandfather rode a boat to Bridgeport with clams in it. They survived the Depression. We own this state. But we have a small group of people who can manipulate the laws and manipulate the courthouse. The state of Connecticut has the crookedest court system by far in the United States of America. They cheat you, they lie to you, they steal from you, and they do it under the color of law, which is a violation of federal racketeering laws. I've been working, I gave up my practice, and I've always been sort of lucky, because I was only out of college 3 years, and I operated on one horse. We won the Kentucky Derby 30 days later, was 3-year-old champion in 87, and horse of the year was 4-year-old. That's about as good as you can do. I had clients send me on private jets to Argentina. I had one of my clients who wanted to do me a favor, because you can be rich, and Bunker Hunt said it best. How do you make $1 million in the horse business? According to Nelson Bunker Hunt, the guy who wanted to hoard all the silver. He said, you start out with $10 million in the horse business, and when you get down to $1 million left, that's when you quit. So the horse business is one of the trickiest businesses in the state of California. That's where I practice. It's super high regulated. I mean, as a veterinary medical doctor, every time we treated every horse, every day, 24 hours a day, you had to register it with the state. The state of California has their own horse racing board, so it's sort of like a country within itself. They had their own like SWAT team and all sorts of stuff. But I came home and ran for governor in 2006, but they could keep me off the ballot. Because the elections are fixed. Everything I've done ain't done for me. Reported to the United States Department of Justice. The state of Connecticut violates the Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act in every case in the civilian court, because they rig it so you don't see a judge for 5 years. I was told when I was working in California by my private attorney, that's where I got this truth. He says, doctor, don't come back to Connecticut to run for governor. He said, now if you come back to Connecticut to run for governor, they're going to steal your house, they're going to steal your cars, they're going to steal this, they're going to steal that, and on and on and on. So it's a true story, it's all been done. It's all documented. So I paid 2 law firms to get a protective court order. 2, not 1, 2. They stole everything anyhow. I swear to God, it's a true story. You have a corrupt system of government that's so corrupt that even the insurance companies don't want to operate in this state. I think it's Aetna. When they bailed, this current administration, you got to give him credit for one thing about your current governor. He's consistent. He's wrong about everything. Right? Now, I even have my own, see, I'm lucky because my dad, really, honest truth was, my dad was like a split personality type, as Spock, as a super scientist, and Thomas Jefferson. And my mom was academically, no one could, she came to school to teach a master's degree at Columbia University. But there's nobody in America intellectually that's smarter than my mom. She had like a photostatic memory, like a computer, like a supercomputer. So I was the only kid who had a dumb luck. I sort of got the 2 halves, I call it. It's like I could do the scientific stuff because of my dad, and I got the scholastic abilities, even though I never used them when I was a kid, to be able to do that kind of stuff too. We need a governor who's got the can't say the rough language. We need a governor who's tough enough to be willing to fight organized crime in the state of Connecticut and take organized crime. If you want to improve the transportation system, you got to get it so organized crime isn't fixing the contracts. And if you want to straighten out the state of Connecticut, you got to get it so organized crime doesn't directly or indirectly control Bridgeport, directly or indirectly control Norwalk, rig or fix the elections by rigging or fixing the primaries. Now, they talk a lot about Russians, but in Connecticut, it's the Democrats who fix these elections. And the easiest way to fix elections, true, is like they wanted to fix it for Hillary Clinton. She can't even beat Bernie Sanders in a fair fight, and he's not even a Democrat. The Democratic Party uses all the labor unions to buy and sell the votes, have the contracts, transfer all this wealth indirectly. That's how they win. For example, if you're a real guy working in the construction business, at the bottom end you make, what, $15, $20 an hour, okay? So what do you make at the top end? I don't really know, but let's say the average guy in the construction business would be happy making $40 an hour, right? You're actually doing the work. Now, if you're one of these operators of high, the big equipment, they get paid more, so I assume. But if you're a guy who's actually working on one of these road construction jobs in Norwalk, and the cop who does absolutely nothing in Norwalk, doesn't direct the traffic, talks on the cell phone all the day, gets $640 a day, how many guys in the construction business are making $150 grand a year? That's how the labor racketeering works in your state of Connecticut. They buy and sell the votes. That's what they don't want you to know. That's why they kept me off the ballot in 2006. My grandfather was a tough guy. He was a truck driver. So he told me a lot of the secrets how the unions would take over the trucking companies. He wasn't in the mafia or anything like that, but it was part of the game, And he always told me one thing. He said, Scott, the only reason they set up pension funds is to steal the money. So what is really Connecticut's deficit? They talk about $65 billion. They told me that there's 3 sets of books in Connecticut. The last governor's race, one of the candidates actually said this. One thing about politicians, and I'm definitely not a politician, is every once in a while, by accident, they go off script and they tell the truth. President Obama, by mistake, told the truth like twice when he talked to Joe the plumber. Joe the plumber said, well, why should I set up this business if you're going to steal all the money from me? Why should you live in Connecticut if you're going to steal all the money from you? Why should you set up a business in Connecticut if you're going to steal all the money from you? And if you have some little rinky-dink issue in a Connecticut court system, you don't see a judge for 5 years. That's their normal way of obstructing justice. I'm saying, in my reports to the United States Department of Justice, every civilian case in Connecticut, they obstruct the administration of justice because they delay you from seeing a judge for 5 years, which lets the lawyers just bill you on all these phony cases. There's no financial incentive for any lawyer to have your case dismissed because that cuts off the cash flow. Jody Rell stated it. Jody Rell was a good girl. She told Blumenthal, "You're leaving now for greener pastures." But you left your citizens, she didn't say phony cases, but most of them, with 30,000 lawsuits. Just leaving one. Richard Blumenthal charged the people of Connecticut for 20 years to be your Attorney General. How many trials as Attorney General for 20 years did Richard Blumenthal ever win? 0. Never won one case. Never took one person to trial himself, and because he didn't want to get exposed. But you keep reelecting these people. I swear to God, this is true. First time I was running for governor, I was down there. I guess I can't tell you that story. But this is just round one. We've got between now and November to decide if we want to elect somebody who's willing to fight for justice and give everybody in the state a fair chance. Thank you for your time.
Prasad Srinivasan lives in Glastonbury, Connecticut. He's a board-certified medical doctor, and he's currently in his 4th term as a state representative. Representative, very nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Don. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving all of us an opportunity to be a part of this conversation. I'm Prasad Srinivasan, and as Don said, I'm a state representative from Glastonbury, the 31st District, serving my 4th term. I'm also a physician. I'm an allergist to private practice for over 35 years. And where we are today is an important juncture because come next year, we will be saying what needs to be done so that we move our state in the right direction, move it forward so that we revive Connecticut and make it prosperous again. That's the agenda for all of us here in this room this morning, and each and every one of us here sitting on the dais. We all have the same objective. How we get there, obviously, are different paths, different opportunities we're going to outlay so that collectively we will decide, obviously, in November next year, as to who will be the most appropriate person to lead our state. Look at where we are in Connecticut right now. Just stepping back in time, and not too long ago, in 1980, I finished my fellowship in allergy and immunology in Chicago. I'm a first-generation immigrant to land on the shores here back in 1975 at Kennedy Airport. I arrived at Kennedy Airport in 75 with $7.50 in my pocket, hopes and dreams. And look where we are today, having had the opportunity to be in Connecticut from 1980. Why Connecticut? Because back then, Connecticut was a state where we knew, all of us, I see in this room here, quite of us give around my age, we know that Connecticut back then was a state where we could raise a family, have a great quality of life, and hopefully be successful in your business, in my case, in my practice. All of this, I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have happened to my wife and myself and our 2 adult children, and now we have 4 grandchildren with a 5th on the way anytime soon. But I look at my grandchildren, I look at the future of Connecticut, and I don't see that. And that is what we need to revive and make our state prosperous again. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. But we need the vision, we need the leadership to make the right call to make that happen. And we look at our state, in the last 7 years that I've been the state representative, I've had the good fortune to visit many, many businesses, large and small. And what they tell us constantly, consistently, is we do not have a predictable environment. And that is why our businesses don't have the confidence of keeping these lights on and those doors open. That has to change. When you look at a predictable environment, you're looking at regulations, we're looking at mandates, we're looking at tax structures. That has to be consistent and cannot be a yo-yo. You do not know what's coming down the pike. When businesses, your businesses, mine, I'm a small business owner, when we cringe, when we are in session, and this year is an unusual year, we're still in session, we're not over yet, and as you know, we're going to be going back again maybe next week, even during the holidays, because our job is still not done. When businesses cringe when we are in session, it just tells you, where are our priorities? How is it that we are functioning in the state, where the state and businesses don't see each other as friends, as partners, as doing things together? Transportation, obviously the key thing that binds all of us this morning, is an economic engine. This economic engine has got to be revived, has got to be jump-started. And that's got to be the agenda of each and every one of us. When I think of transportation, I think of transportation as the arteries. Those are the major lifelines that run through the entire state. And this arterial system, which is transportation in our state, you can't let it get clogged. You can't let the arterial system go into spasm. And obviously you cannot have them go into the end effect, where it destroys the end organs or the communities that this transportation system serves. So that's got to be our goal moving forward. How do we revive the economic engine? How do we make sure that transportation is not on the past century, but we are the cutting edge and moving forward? And to that, we can focus only on transportation, but that's only a part of the piece. We've got to look at the state in its entirety. We've got to look at, yes, we talked about income taxes, and as you said, what benefit has income taxes done to us? You know, I moved to Connecticut, as I said, in 1980. We had no taxes. There was no such thing as an income tax. We didn't have any revenue coming from the casinos. We didn't have the lottery that brought in more funds into the state coffers. And we did great. We were doing fine. Obviously, what we have, along with the partial revenue problem, the bigger problem for the state is a spending problem that we have. We are not fiscally responsible. We do not know how to tighten the belt and do what needs to be done so that we move our state forward. That has got to be the agenda. You've got to institute a constitutional spending cap and stick to that constitutional spending cap. In this session alone, there was a lot of discussion, and steps have been taken in the right direction. But according to me, not enough. It is not right to say that certain parts of the budget, certain expenses are off, and they do not count. Every expense counts. You run your homes, you run your businesses. Can you say that this expense, you know what, I went on this fancy vacation, but that doesn't go into the account because it's off limit? Of course not. If that is how you run your accounts at home, and how you run your business, how I run my practice, how come when it comes to the state, it's a different story altogether? So we have to institute a constitutional spending cap, which is true in its every sense of the word. We have to look at inefficiencies that are in our state. Look at all the state agencies. That's the first thing any one of us have to do. Look at these agencies. How are we running our agencies? Is it the most efficient way? Is it the most cost-efficient way? Wouldn't you do that in the construction business, in the various businesses that you run, the businesses that I run? Of course I do. We're always looking at what our needs are, and we're also looking at what we need to do to get there. The state does not do that. The inefficiencies we have to look at to make sure that we address these issues. The future of our state, the future of our citizens, the next generation and generation to come is at stake. And for us to look at transportation, it is if you look at the future of transportation and say, we're going to focus in where we are today, it's not going to be enough. We need to move forward. We need to make sure we have the 21st century transportation needs in our mind and make that happen. We have a long list of things, but there are, for me to talk about your needs, your requirements, is taking Cole to Newcastle. You are the experts, but we, on this side, have to work together, both at the governor's office and the state legislature, along with industry, to make sure it is a win-win situation for all of us. If you make me your choice, I can assure you I will be your voice, a voice that represents each and every one of you to the best of my capacity. Thank you this morning for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Peter Talheim lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. He's a veteran of the U.S. Army and the owner of a construction company. Peter, it's very nice to have you here with us this morning.
I was just advised to keep it short, which is not my strength, as I'm an attorney, but I'm supposed to keep it short. You have a clock? All right, thank you so much. It's 10 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So last evening I was at a Republican governor's event, and I told them that there was a very interesting crowd, but I have to say that actually you are much more attractive than the crowd last evening, which is kudos to you. It's in the daylight. I usually look better in dim lighting. Anyway, so I'm not a professional politician. Who am I? I've been described as irredeemable and deplorable. I think there are a few irredeemable and deplorable people out here. And why am I irredeemable? Well, I'm a builder. And when you're a builder, sometimes you got to work with your hands. I build custom homes, spec homes, do additions, and we know the Fourth Estate Press doesn't necessarily like people who build with their hands. I'm also an attorney. I will get to that. I don't want any wisecracks about being an attorney. It's a very useful skill. I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker. I actually sell houses down from the Greenwich end of things. I'm a veteran. I served in the 4th JAG in the Bronx as an attorney. I joined as a first lieutenant. I was 29 years old. I made it to major. I spent, actually wore the uniform in Panama Canal Zone a few times, and in and in Germany. I spent 13 years on a list of state. I am an immigrant. Came here in 1963 from Germany after the Cuban Missile Crisis, after the Berlin Wall crisis. I'm so grateful to be in this country. You know, I have a theme, which I have my sign over there: gratitude, common humanity, and liberty. Because it's not just one thing to win the Republican nomination for governor. You've got to win the actual election. That's the big prize. And part of my gratitude is being so grateful to be in this country as an immigrant. The freedoms we have here are remarkable. And freedom of liberty, speech, and press are actually a historical anomaly. And that is one reason why I'm running. I was chairman of the Middlebury College Republicans way back when. I've been very interested in politics for a very long time. I'm the father of 3 great daughters. Mr. Handler beats me out. He's got 4 daughters. Okay? So that's my kudos to him. I have to say, as a Sunday school teacher for 7 years. Now, why am I running? Like the rest of you, I'm concerned with the fiscal state of the state of Connecticut. But I'm also concerned with political correctness, identity politics, and intolerance on college campuses. And I feel that next year, whoever is the Republican nominee will be abused by the press and take all the defamatory things said about Donald Trump will be said about any Republican nominee. And you have to be able to present a very positive platform, positions, and that's why I call myself the only Big Tent candidate in this election on the Republican side. because I've designed my platform to represent the African American community, the Spanish American community, and the Asian American community. I have over 14 articles on my site. You don't have to remember my name, Peter Talheim, www.saveconnecticut, fully spelled out.com. You'll find my articles there. And for a politician to come before you and talk about lowering taxes, lowering spending, and getting rid of government waste is, I submit to you, nothing new. It's said all the time. It is an objective, certainly. So, I will suggest to you that I do, in fact, have an answer to the fiscal issues of the state of Connecticut. And it's basically two things. First one is going to average. And I want to preface that with quoting James Madison in Federal 62, where he said that two main roles of government. Number one is to achieve the happiness of the people. That's the goal. That's the citizenry. And number two is how to best get there. And so using that standard, going to average, and I don't have economists on my campaign, is if our compensation of our well-meaning and kind government employees were set at the average of the 25 states. I go around to Republican Town Committee meetings with a graph from the American Enterprise Institute from 2014 that shows our compensation, our benefits and all that at about 42% above the private sector. Well, that right there tells you that's not good government because it's supposed to be the happiness of the citizen. So I asked, and the average ends up being around 10%. If we just lowered the entire compensation package down to 10%, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. The other one is what I call 50 for 20. What is 50 for 20? 50 for 20 is 50 years of paying pension for 20 years of work. A city has a job somebody holds for 20 years, and the next year somebody holds it, or the next person holds it for 21 years. At year 42, we have one full-time salary, we have 2 pensions, 3 health care benefits, and all the other benefits. Clearly, in an overused word, that is unsustainable. That ends now. Because to be fair to the private sector citizenry, if the private sector is 401k, that's what it is going forward. And that is a great solution. Now, I've also understand as an attorney that the courts will allow you to adjust around the edges of existing pensions. And that will help the trajectory. That will help the curve. So that's for the fiscal crisis. Now, CBAC agreement. Some people say, gee, they said this summer that they passed a law that we could not lay off any kind of well-meaning state employee for 4 years, can't change the terms for 10. Well, I'm the one who wrote the article. This is where it's a benefit to be an attorney. I wrote the article that points out that is in fact unconstitutional. You'll find it on my site that one legislature by a mere majority vote, signature by the governor, cannot disenfranchise subsequent legislatures. Can't do it. We can amend our Constitution with 3/4 vote of the legislature and a public referendum. And they want us to believe, oh yeah, right. They want us to believe that we can't undo that. Of course we can. It's 35% of the budget. Because if not 10 years, why not 20? It's patently absurd. But the trick is we have to have a Republican governor, a Republican Senate, and a Republican General Assembly. If that doesn't happen, I don't want to say it's lights out, but I don't see where it's going. So we have to get those 3 things. Who is the most electable? And under what platform? So, I'm the home builder. I understand this is engineers. You build big things, bridges, etc. But my big campaign thing on liberty is the administrative state. This is an existential struggle we're having now. Will the state win or the citizen? And right now the state is winning. That is the millstone around our neck of the unfunded pension liabilities and constantly having to have more money. So, a specific solution is the fewer laws we have, the more freedom. Why stay in Connecticut if you can have more freedom or liberty in another state? The state building code gets ratcheted up every 5 years to serve outside interests. I'm a realtor. I will sell you a house built in 1950 with new kitchen, bathrooms, new appliances, new insulation, and you will move in there happily. Oh, there was no building inspector. How can that be? Well, let me tell you, the administrative state, the king has no clothes. What they tell us to do. I heard today that the professional fees in Connecticut are higher than other states. What do? And yet we follow it. In Vermont today, Bernie Sanders, Vermont, most towns have no building code. But we'll go there. The house isn't going to fall down. It is ridiculous what we do to ourselves. We now have like these sheer walls inside. Give me a break. But that's where we shoot ourselves in the foot. Why do we make the most expensive thing that we buy more expensive? It goes out. Home Improvement Contractor Act. is a denial of the human right to work with your hands and back to put food on your plate. You gotta pay the state. A poor person has to pay the state $220. Yeah, they got $220 burning a hole in their pocket. To have the right to work with their hands? Oh, you better fill out the paperwork properly and bring your attorney. Because the administrative state's position is, if you are poor of moderate means, don't even apply. Don't even show up. I don't even want to tell you about the hell of planning and zoning down in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's absurd. So the administrative state is not your friend. So I propose the whole Home Improvement Contractor Act gets thrown out. The state does not deliver what it promises. Okay? We still have fraud. We still have breach of contract. Oh, guess what? If you're the laborer and you don't have the right forms, the right paperwork, the state will not support you. You're out. And that's wrong. So that's a more specific one. Now, building our economy. It's all in the economy. We have to grow the economy. And I have an article on Sweden and Germany on my site. Why would I do that? Because it's an advanced industrial nation with high cost of living, but guess what? They make stuff. Germany, about 22% of the economy is making stuff. Sweden, about 16%. The US, about 40%. Connecticut, 10.4% is making stuff. It is so unsustainable. You're sending plastic pellets, you're sending scrap metal, you're sending wood across the ocean to China to have it fabricated. We can have the post-automation economy here. Distribution people, logistic people, sales, marketing, and the people to fix the machines right here. In my economics article, which is 11 pages long, I can go fast because, oh boy, I'm running out. Okay. So I have an 11-page economics article on Connecticut. It talks about natural gas, that's an input. It talks about our workers' comp things, etc. So I make the point, like New London Harbor should be considered as a deep water port. That's a container port, like Port Elizabeth. It's deep, it's on the ocean, we've got train tracks, we've got a highway. You think some South Korean or Greek enterprise want to have a container port there. Now, my finishing one is, you know, Amazon is looking for their HQ2, something like 50,000 jobs, $100,000 average salary. I looked at the RFP, and I submitted a supplement. And this supplement boasts of the advantages that we have in Connecticut. We used to have Fortune 500 companies in Fairfield County. Why? Because of our natural advantages. And we forget how great we are. I talk about the Boston megalopolis, Boston, Washington, 47 million people, 20% of the U.S. economy. We tower over California. That's sustainability. Go live in where they're closest to your market. New England, most educated place, least crime. That's great for us. Stanford region, we have the infrastructure. We've got the roads that they've built there. It's already there. We've got the office space. And we have the ace in the hole. We have New York City, the best city in the world. Boston is a second-rate city. I'm sorry. It is. New York is the best. And we have it. We are still the lowest tax area. So, thank you for your time.
Joseph Visconti lives in West Hartford, where he has served as a West Hartford Town Councilor. He's president of a media group. Joe, very nice to have you here.
Thank you, Don, for having me, and thank you to the group of sponsors. This is a fantastic breakfast. Food was great. I am not a lawyer, but I've hired one before. Got to start a little bit here, but this has been really great to see such a full line of candidates from diverse backgrounds, and I'm really happy to be part of it. I'm a building contractor. I was raised in the construction business. My grandfather, talk about bridges, and we're going to talk about specifics right now on transportation, but quickly I'd like to tell you a little bit of my history. My grandfather, Battista Visconti, from Lake Como area near Milan, outside of Milan, immigrated to Middletown, Connecticut. He worked on the Aragoni Bridge. He passed away in a car accident the day the Aragoni Bridge opened here in Middletown, Connecticut. We were there last night at another gubernatorial event. And he worked in the brickyards during the Depression and didn't speak English. My dad went to 8th grade, Depression kid, and raised me. I went to work before I had a memory. And so I'm 61 years old, but I was raised in the trades. Just last week I finished a chimney project for a good friend of mine. Our company grew from home improvement. My dad did roofing in the 40s after there was a Marine in the war. And so I was raised by a Marine. I could build a bridge with you all. My father was an iron worker. I pour concrete, I have the Carhartt. These aren't platitudes, this is real. That's who I am. And so I was raised in the trades. our contracts were for the Aetna, the Hartford Insurance, just about every major Fortune 500 company in Connecticut. And so I've gone through the trades from a young man, a little kid, back in the day, in the early 60s, at every aspect of construction. So what I want to have happen is whatever we do in transportation is the dollars to go to the workers, as much money to the workers and to Connecticut workers. Connecticut first and Connecticut workers only for transportation. Our money has to stay here, whatever we do with transportation. I'm a non-union contractor, but I was in the state gen union. My uncle Mike Sullivan ran that unit for years, and I walked the picket line when I was a young man with him when there was no construction work in the recession. So I've lived through about 4 recessions, going through the things that are many contractors. The layoffs in the wintertime. My father-in-law, we lived together. My wife, watching when there was no work, there was no bridges, no bridge work. And so I've lived with the working man. I am the working man. Candidate, it's just who I am. I'd like to get off to a couple of things that are very important for statistics. I'm going to read you really quick because I haven't heard many stats here. This is from the TRIP organization, the Reason Foundation, and the American Society of Civil Engineers. Connecticut has 21,000 miles of public roads, with 7% in poor condition. Half were built more than 55 years ago. The town roads are 17,000 miles. 10% of the state roads are now over capacity. 42% of businesses believe that the state road congestion restricts the territory of their market, and 15% have considered moving or relocating because of this. 40 hours are spent sitting in traffic every year due to congestion. That's 1.6 billion in lost time and fuel. 364 miles of freight railroads across the state, ranks 46th nationally. $864 per year per motorist for the cost of driving on the roads for repair of their vehicles. 273 high hazard dams, 338 of the 4,200 bridges are structurally deficient. We have 5,300 bridges, 4,000 are owned and maintained by the state of Connecticut. In Connecticut, our gas tax is 40 cents per gallon. 45% that goes to state and local repair. Massachusetts has 27 cents per gallon. 56% of that goes to state and local. New York has 44 cents per gallon tax, and 70% goes to state and local. I announced when I debated the governor in 2014, when I was a candidate, that I was pro-tolls. I'm probably the only candidate that's going to be a Republican that will speak about it, but maybe not. The whole field isn't here. And I'm on the record for that. I came up with a concept with my team, and it can work through the legislature where the W-2 employees that are working out of state can get a tax deduction on their income tax. People that are in business that commute out of state can deduct that already from their businesses. I'm against internal tolls, and I believe we need to be a pro-Trump administration supporter, whoever the next governor is, for one reason only. We're going to need a federal waiver on many of the formulas that make up tolls across the country. Without getting into the weeds on it, that means this is a national security corridor. So what's going to happen is we have to have exemptions in some of the processes where we don't have to have tolls. Like House Speaker Joe Erzmanowitz said, we want tolls everywhere, we want them here, we want them everywhere. No, we don't want them everywhere. We're looking at revenue clocks going across border tolls. Right now you don't even have toll booths. The revenue clock would be put across all your toll booths, 91, 84, 95, so when commuters are coming in and out, they can see the billions of dollars that are raised across the year. If the state or the next governor, if it wasn't me, decides to raid and rob that fund, the citizens can basically park on the highway with a thermos and just line up, and the people will have control because they'll see every day the money that should be going. That's your lockbox. It's the lunchbox. And we don't need a constitutional amendment to say we're not thieves and we're not going to steal from that which we promised. So the Governor Malloy has been the worst, probably not to beat him up anymore, but probably the worst salesman. And if he could have only told the truth, as I debated the governor with Tom Foley in 2014, you're living through today what I told you would come for 3 years, the 3 tidal waves. We're now in the 4th tidal wave. And why is this important? This is important for all candidates. They say, why are you running again? When you were unconscious or being lied to, I was awake and I was telling you on live television to millions of people. And I had to endure personally, knowing what was coming for you all, because the information was there, and it's there today at the Office of Fiscal Analysis. You can take that information and you can find it. So it's not a big magic wand or miracle. The information's there. We are bleeding. We're bleeding bad. So let me address some of the things about the gas tax and why it's important for us to understand why, although it would be great to take the gas tax down right now, many of the out-of-state people are coming through not even buying gas, as you know. So we're looking at the gas tax being tied to inflation presently, because I predict that even though they're showing about $6.5 billion in the upcoming few years for deficits, I believe we're looking more close to $20 billion if we continue on this course. And I'm not going to get into all the side issues. This is transportation, our rail system. I'll give you some more information on our rail system. The most important thing, I think, with the rails are that Amtrak and Metro North are monstrous bureaucracies. We need to expedite the processes with the Trump administration. And again, let's talk about Donald Trump for a second, because I'm a big supporter. I know he's abrasive. Worked hard to help the president get elected as a volunteer across the country, on CNN, everywhere. And only because I believe he does have the Midas touch. Beyond the personality traits you may not like, he has the Midas touch. The country's moving forward. The stock market, not just the stock market, GDP is up maybe at 4.5% everywhere but Connecticut. And why is this? We need federal government help here in Connecticut. We need our elected officials at the highest level not to be attacking the president as they are 24/7, trying to do the things we're doing. Not just because it's a personality thing or because it's politics. We need help with the Trump administration on our highways, on our bridges. I'm also looking at an idea that we put forward last election, and this idea is very important. I'm running it by many of the businesses that have large trucks, paving trucks, commercial trucks. The internal roads, we believe that the towns, because of the $20 billion, I believe, is coming in deficits, that the towns, the state will need to give less and less to towns. So education, as a West Hartford town councilor, I was sitting on the community planning, I watched the roads, I was an education liaison. I know we do great education in West Hartford at a very high cost, but what's going to have to happen is, Chris Christie did it bad, the governor's tried to do it this year, less and less money will be going to the towns. And what I believe we need to do for transportation is take a look at those thousands of bridges that are in municipalities, those secondary roads, and put transponders on those bridges, and certain vehicles over a certain GVW weight would pay pennies or nickels, and that money would stay earmarked into that town for the town road and for the town bridge that the state DOT does not own or operate or repair at the present time. It's an internal toll, but it's an internal toll for commerce. Why am I speaking to the corporations, FedEx, UPS, and all the major companies that cross our bridges over a certain GVW truck? Because we don't want whatever the formula is that the state legislature could look at to allow the towns to have those transponders on those small bridges, that it doesn't interfere with driving the cost of the delivery of the products. It's going to be a factor. Many of the companies said right now where we are in Connecticut, Joe, we would absorb that cost because we know we're hitting those bridges all the time. We're on them. All the small secondary bridges, and there's thousands of them outside of our highways. So we need to look at internal tolls for commercial traffic and find a happy medium where the money stays in the town for those specific bridges. Also, these roads of 17,000 miles of roads across Connecticut, they're not owned by the state DOT. Those roads need to be repaired. As you can see, you'll need a Humvee pretty soon to drive through Hartford. The roads are so bad. And so, getting to the chase of it all, a couple of the last things I'll say, because I'm probably running out of time, is there is no way. It is impossible, and any candidate tells you otherwise is lying to you. There's no way from where we are today to not have some form of tax increase or fee increase on certain things where we are today. Not a lot, and as minimal as possible, but we are in such a, and this is important because as Republicans to say that, not to politicize it, but to tell you the truth, we are that bad. We would just like to be able to forecast a plan out of that problem. And if there's going to be minimal fees, not be surprised every week like we were last week. Well, anyway, last thing I'd like to say is my slogan for my campaign: let's get Connecticut back to work. Thank you all for having me.
David Walker lives in Bridgeport. He's former Comptroller General of the United States and currently a strategic consultant. David, very nice to have you here today.
Don, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank all of you for being here this morning. Let me cover the three things. One, a little bit about myself. Secondly, a little bit about where we are, what we need to do. And last, why I think I'm the best candidate for governor. I was born in Alabama, was raised in Alabama and Florida. I lived in 7 states plus the District of Columbia. My wife and I chose Connecticut 8 years ago. We moved from Mount Vernon, Virginia to Black Rock, Connecticut. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I am not a politician. I'm a professional problem solver with a proven track record of making major transformational change in financial restructuring not only happen, but stick in government. I've had the good fortune of being able to travel to all 50 states, 100 countries, all 8 continents, and so I've seen some of the best and some of the worst transportation systems in the world. I'm a CPA with over 40 years of proven leadership experience in the private sector, the government, and the not-for-profit sector. And I even have an interest in and some credentials with regard to transportation. For example, when I was Comptroller General of the United States, which in English is Auditor General, Chief Performance and Accountability Office of the United States for 10 years under the end of Clinton and pretty much all of Bush 43, we did work on how do you improve the performance and ensure the accountability of the federal government for the American people. In everything the federal government was doing, we're thinking about doing anywhere in the world. And one of our important teams was on fiscal infrastructure, which included transportation and many other areas. We did a lot of work in that area. In addition to that, the Carnegie Endowment selected former Senator Bill Bradley, former Governor Tom Ridge, and I to chair a national study called Road to Recovery on what do we need to do in order to do a better job of planning and executing transportation in the United States, focused primarily on the federal issues, but also with some relevance elsewhere. And secondly, I've had the good fortune of being able to deal with a number of leaders in government, including just yesterday, R.J. Berry, who's the immediate former mayor of Albuquerque, who's the only city in the country that's achieved a gold medal for the types of reforms that they've done on urban transit systems in Albuquerque. Let me give you a few facts. Connecticut's broke. Connecticut is in recession. We've gone from a top 5 state to a bottom 5 state in the last 30 years. State government has grown too big, promised too much, needs to restructure. Connecticut spends too much on consumption and legacy costs and not enough on investment, including transportation. The trust funds have been raided. The rainy day fund, quote unquote, is almost dry. And we still have large and growing budget deficits that we're having to deal with on a recurring basis. We've proved the Laffer curve. We've raised taxes so high that revenues are now declining. We are one of a few states in the Union that not only is a net outbound state with a disproportionate number of wealthy people leaving and a disproportionate number of people who want to benefit from our generous social welfare programs coming, we have a declining population. The bottom line is we are in condition critical. Connecticut has over $71 billion in unfunded pension and retiree health care obligations. These obligations are growing much faster than the rest of the budget. They are the giant Pac-Man that's eating our lunch. They are resulting in increasing pressure for higher taxes and reduced investments for education, for infrastructure, and are starting to fray our social safety net. They must be restructured in an equitable and sustainable manner in order to create a better future. And if you don't have somebody who's willing to do that and has a proven track record of being able to do that, you might as well move. And I'm serious. This is the fatal disease that we have to address in an equitable and sustainable fashion. We need to do many other things. As a result of our lack of transportation investment, our highways are clogged and our rail systems have deteriorated dramatically. When you enter Connecticut, you see a sign that says, "Welcome to Connecticut." I would add underneath it right now, "Prepare to stop." I go all over this state, 95, 81, 91, 84, and a bunch of other highways. We have a serious problem that not only has an implication with regard to economic development, quality of life, but it has national security and other implications as well. We have to make sure that we make transportation a priority rather than have the leftovers. What am I for? I'm for making state government smaller as well as more economical, efficient, effective, and respected. I've done it. Secondly, I have a comprehensive and integrated transportation plan. I want to make transportation funding a high priority. I want to restore the integrity of the transportation and other trust funds. I want to pursue public-private partnerships to accelerate infrastructure investments and to leverage private capital, including pension funds. Among other things, I've been CEO of 3 federal organizations, 2 agencies, 2 that deal with pensions and healthcare, directly relevant to what our challenges are here. I was the ERISA czar, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, so I'm very aware of the largest pool of capital in the world, which is pension capital in the world, and how we can leverage that to benefit security as well as to enhance infrastructure investment as well. We need to pursue higher and high-speed rail. We need to pursue alternative transportation systems such as high-speed water to and from New York City, water ferries to and from New York City. And we need to create stronger support from the federal government in order to make sure that we get our fair share. I am well known, well respected in Washington, D.C. The chair and the ranking member of the Senate Transportation Committee are personal friends, the Secretary of Transportation, personal friends, and I know a number of other members on the relevant agencies and committees. We are not getting our fair share. The fact is our elected federal representatives are at war with the administration. No matter what you think of Donald Trump, he is the President of the United States, and he knows who his friends are and he knows who his enemies are. We need to have somebody who can effectively represent our interests in Washington, D.C. So in closing, the USS Connecticut is sinking. We've gone from a flagship state to a sinking ship in 30 years, but it is not too late to create a better future. 2018 is critical. We must elect a governor who not only knows what has to be done, but has a proven track record of having the courage, the credibility, the communication skills, and the commitment to get things done. Lots of people can talk about what needs to be done. Very few have a proven track record of getting it done. You need the best captain that you can get, but we also need a Connecticut turnaround team, which means constitutional officers in key positions who can support the effort, and a majority of the Senate and a majority of the House that will support the types of reforms that are necessary to create a better future in our state. I want to be a one-term governor. My wife wants me to be a one-term governor. Seriously. I want to come in and do what the heck needs to be done and get out and turn it over to somebody else. That's what I want to do. I am for 2-term limits, so no way I will stay more than 8 years. But I would love to be a one-term governor to do what needs to be done and to get out. I'm focused on turning around in Connecticut and revitalizing our cities. You can't have a great state and have deteriorating cities. My platform focuses on what do we need to do to create economic growth and jobs, restore integrity and accountability in government, and put our finances in order. Go to CTNewsJunkie.com. You'll find a lot of specifics, because we need to have an issues-oriented, solutions-based, referendum-style campaign, so not only do we win, but we have a mandate for action when we do win. I'm the best choice for governor for 3 reasons. Number 1, I'm the only candidate, Democrat, Republican, and independent. We will have an independent this time. Democrat, Republican, or independent, who has a proven track record of making government smaller, more economical, more efficient, more effective, more respected, and has a proven track record not of reforming, of restructuring pension and retiree health care programs. Restructuring. There's a huge difference. We don't need modest reform. We need major restructuring. In addition to that, I have a plan to try to turn around the state and revitalize the cities, and as I said before, I have contacts and credibility in Washington that can help us, and I can win. I have strong support across the aisle. I'm a Reagan, Bush, Clinton presidential appointee, confirmed unanimously by the Senate 3 times, twice when the Democrats controlled it, once from the Republicans. I'm one of the national co-founders of No Labels, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. I can win. We must win to save Connecticut. Thank you.
Mark already. He lives in Shelton, Connecticut, where he has served as mayor of Shelton since 1991, and he's the chairman of the Metropolitan Planning Organization in Bridgeport. Mayor, we're going to have you.
Thank you, Don, and good morning, everyone. I think you've, over the last hour or so, just witnessed all the shortcomings of our great state. I think we can all could agree that we spend too much, we regulate too much, and we tax way too much. I don't want to be a one-term governor, because the first day you take office, you become a lame duck governor. And that's a serious disadvantage. I want to be a governor that can be successful. I think that over the tenure of mayor in my city of 26 years, people ask me about term limits. I have term limits. I have to stand for re-election every 2 years. So my term is 2 years. And I have to get the confidence of the people that reside in my community to be re-elected. That happened 14 times. There's a reason for that. Shelton, 25, 26 years ago, was not much different to many other cities and towns around the state of Connecticut and New England. Many of you know that once upon a time, we made everything in the world in this great state. And when that changed, because government changed, we created big voids in our cities, in our industrial bases, and a lot of properties fell into disrepair and vacancy. And so what was left behind, nothing but problems. So when you walk into a situation like that, you've got to decide that you're either going to affect a change, and a positive one, to redistribute the way things have been done. It's called reinventing yourself. Many places have done that around the country. Connecticut needs to reinvent itself for a variety of reasons. And it really starts with supporting your infrastructure. And we did that in Shelton. The B.F. Goodrich site, which is on the Pousatonic River, was the largest arson fire in the country's history. It laid there in disrepair for over 30 years. Today it's a vibrant part of our community and our valley community, because we have cleaned it up and we have reinitiated new economic activities that have been centered around that. We've done that through investment in our infrastructures. You know, I've been, had the opportunity to serve under 4 different governors, many different commissioners of transportation, environmental protection, many state agencies. And I've watched this Connecticut get wound up. It took 30 years for us to get to this point, and we're not getting out of it anytime soon. So it's going to take someone who has demonstrated to other places in Connecticut that it can be done. And it's done through economic revival. And it's done through making Connecticut affordable again. In my city, I have not raised taxes in 9 years. 9 years. If you look at my mill rate over the last 26 years, 19 times, we have either left it alone or lowered it. The reason that I tell you this is because it's important to understand that businesses and residents need predictability and they need stability. And I offer that. And that's why my city continues to grow in a state that is in decline. There's a big difference about talking about your credentials and who you are. Get in the field and affect the change. If I don't raise taxes, tell me who benefits. Every business, every senior citizen who is on a fixed income and can't afford an increase every single year in their property taxes and is pushed out. How about every young family that is trying to make a mortgage payment, trying to send their kids to college? How about young kids that can't come back to Connecticut because the gainful employment that was once here is no longer? Or if they do come back, they can't afford to be here, and they generally have to live with their parents. So the goal is to make Connecticut affordable. And the one role that government should be playing is the role of infrastructure. If government is in the lead in terms of economic development, we're in a wrong place. That's for the private entrepreneurs. That's what's occurred in my city. When I got elected, Shelton was home to 400 businesses. Today we're home to over 1,500. Companies like Perkin-Elmer, Pitney Bowes, Sikorsky, Prudential, United Healthcare. Hubble was in Orange for 102 years. Shelton is now their home. Vic was in Milford for 52 years. Shelton is now their home. And we didn't offer any financial incentives. We offered them predictability and the most competitive tax rate that the state has to offer. And that's how we're growing our economy. Connecticut needs to be a good predictable, an affordable predictable. And that's what we're not. I do that every single day. And when I stop doing that, then I get my job card punched. Then my term limit expires. And then I go somewhere else. So talk about a demonstrated ability to achieve. The Shelton story is what the state of Connecticut could and should look like. We've got businesses moving in. We've done what we've needed to do with our infrastructures. We have been disciplined with our spending, not like the state that raids the transportation fund and depletes all of its resources. So it can't forward the state's agenda in terms of capital projects. You know, $1 billion of investment creates about 13,000 jobs. That's a big deal in a state that is losing jobs. When I got elected in 1991, about 4,000 people came into our city to come to work every day. Today, 25,000 people come into work. I understand transportation and the needs and the reasons for making sure that there's a good and orderly flow for people to come and go, because it affects everything across the board. It affects your ability to grow from a business standpoint. It affects commerce and industry and how important it is for those to function properly, to commute to and from work. We have not been disciplined, and we have catered to special interests. I didn't do that. I didn't do that consistently. I understand the big picture and the priorities to be able to grow a municipality, particularly in a state that's in decline. There's a reason that Bloomberg's Business Week magazine in 2008 tabbed Shelton as Connecticut's most successful city. And then again in 2016, Zippia, which is a national rating agency, rated Shelton as Connecticut's most affordable city. Now, that's not Mark already saying that. That's someone else from outside our borders saying that. Because they've evaluated and compared us to everyone else. So when people stand up here and talk about their credentials and being proven about what they've done, the proof is in the pudding. Pass a budget, levy a tax rate that's consistent for people to be able to afford to live there, to work there, to bring their business there and expand their business there. Government's role is to supply the infrastructure and and it all starts with transportation. And unless you understand how all that works, then you're just talking pie in the sky. You know, as I've said, I've watched different governors, and they're all very different with different ideologies, wind this thing up. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in. So it's going to take good decision making. It's going to take negotiation. It's going to take the next governor to have a relationship with the legislature, because they certainly are a big part of this equation. We have to unwind some of these regulations. We have to take some of these laws that are on the books that affect every area of government and are just nothing but costly. They have outlived their useful life. They cost us all money. And you know, quite honestly, if we don't generate more economic activity and generate more revenue, we are not solving this problem. We have to come at it from both directions. I believe that over the last 26 years, that I not only have an understanding about how it works, but have demonstrated the ability to create success. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning, and I look forward to a long and continuing dialogue about why Connecticut can be great again. Thank you.
That concludes the speaking portion. Can we have a nice round of applause and thanks for our candidates that have been here today? We can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your schedule to join us. And I encourage all of you, this is a great opportunity to meet some candidates, have a chance to talk with them before they leave. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful holiday season.